Today we'll show you another adaptive shock absorber from an interesting car. It's about the Porsche Taycan. These are the two front shock absorbers and the two air springs of the Porsche 9J1. Here are the part numbers for the left and right shock absorber. The shock absorbers are made by ZF. The shock absorbers are produced by ZF and they resemble those from the Panamera 971. What's interesting here is that the air springs are three-chamber. What does three-chamber air spring mean? By changing the volume of air the car rests on, we can change the spring coefficient, i.e. the spring rate. How does this happen? This air spring is three-chamber because here is the first chamber. This is another air chamber. And this is the third chamber of the air spring. These are the solenoids that determine which chamber is filled with air. It depends on the solenoids whether only the rubber bladder is filled with air. Here it is. If the solenoid valve opens from here, the second chamber starts filling. And this volume will be completely filled with air. If the next solenoid opens, the third chamber will fill as well. In this way, we can change the stiffness of the air spring's spring rate so that the stiffness corresponds properly to that of the shock absorber. Let's repeat that the shock absorber is manufactured by ZF. It is extremely compact and powerful. What do I mean by that? The shock absorber is a monotube with internal stiffness control. Here through the rod runs a cable that controls the solenoid valve, which changes the stiffness of the shock absorber over an extremely wide range. From an extremely soft shock it can become very, very stiff. This is a big advantage for Porsche suspension. The same type of shock absorber is in the Panamera. Very efficient, compact, and light shock absorber. It is not aluminum like on a first Panamera, but steel, yet in diameter, weight, and dimensions it's extremely compact. While at the same time it does a huge job, because it can create resistance from almost nothing up to almost 1 ton. That's extremely rare in the world of adaptive shock absorbers. Of course, these shocks have issues. One has a cracked air spring, and the other has a knocking shock. Before the repair, we'll put them on the bench to check how they work. We're starting an initial dynamometer test of the shock absorber. We expect it to be quite empty because its oil had leaked out. As you can see, it's almost weightless because it creates virtually no resistance. The shock absorber had leaked and only gas remained inside. Pressurized nitrogen. Since it's empty, there's no way to show it to you with solenoid control. In effect, this car was riding only on the air spring, with the shock absorber not absorbing any bumps. Now we're showing you the shock opened up, as promised. What is the way the stiffness is changed? This is the working piston. It moves inside the shock absorber. Hydraulic oil passes through these ports and exits here. On the return stroke, the oil enters here and exits there. The flow through the working piston is controlled by the solenoid valve, which moves inside the piston. What are the main problems of this type of shock absorbers? One of the main problems is the separator.
е сепараторът. Това
It is located right here and separates the gas from the oil.
разделя газта от маслото, азот. Когато
This O-ring constantly moves and seals against the inner wall of the shock absorber.
плътнява стените
When it wears out, gas passes into the oil and the oil turns into foam.
газ в маслото и маслото става
When the oil is foamy, it thickens and expands non-linearly,
то се сгъстява и
resulting in improper shock operation because of the inconsistent resistance of the passing oil. The other problem is the guide.
другият проблем, който в нашия случай е това нещо, това е водачът.
The guide is located here and the shock rod passes through it.
И през него минава стеблото на амортисьора. Във водача
The oil seal is encapsulated inside the guide.
семеринг, масленото уплътнение. Когато
When it fails, the oil leaks out. If the oil leaks,
маслото вече няма вътре в
the shock becomes empty and doesn't work.
Както при всички наши.
As with all our shock absorbers, with this one too we use an improved guide made of another alloy. Our type of guide is almost indestructible, and the best part is that with our guide the oil seal is replaceable. That is, the oil seal is no longer encapsulated and the shock becomes serviceable and rebuildable. Once a shock is repaired by us, it also becomes much more environmentally friendly.
Ремонтиран амортисьора с наш водач и наше уплътнение, той става и много
Because if you have any issue with the shock in the future,
френдли, така да го наречем, защото ако в бъдеще имате
the future repair will be extremely cheap,
бъдещият му ремонт ще бъде изключително ефтин,
extremely easy, and almost nothing will need to be replaced. It will just need servicing. Enough talking about the shock absorber.
толкова за амортисьора. Сега
Now once we fix it, we'll put it back on the bench,
как работи.
and we'll show you how stiffening and softening work.
Отделно сме захванали и
Separately, we've also started the repair of the air spring.
е важно топ маунт.
It's very important that the top mount, which is here, be replaced during the repair. We will replace the rubber part of the air spring that is damaged here.
И на други видеа сме
We use only a rubber sleeve that is manufactured specially for us.
гума, която е предназначена за.
In this way, we can monitor the quality of the materials used.
По този начин можем да следим качеството на
Nothing is left to chance. Everything is verified.
живота им, просто да няма нищо случайно, всичко да бъде проверено.
When we assemble the shock absorber, we'll show you how the three-chamber air spring works.
Камерната въздушна възглавница.
We'll demonstrate how it changes its spring rate. Here is the repaired shock absorber.
Да ви покажем амортисьора след като сме го събрали.
We'll run it in two modes, once in hard and once in soft mode,
В твърд и в мек, за да видите разликата,
so you can see the difference in the resistance it generates.
той създава.
At the moment, it's in its softest setting and you can see it behaves extremely softly.
Виждате, че изключително слабо се държи.
We apply control to the solenoid and run the same test again.
Пускаме отток и пускаме отново същия тест.
so that the graphs can be compared.
Графиките да бъдат наложени една върху друга и да видите разликата.
This way, you'll see the difference in bound and rebound in the different modes. You can see even at low speed, the resistance is 5 kilograms on rebound.
Без управление 5 кг на ребаунд, сега е 247.
Now it became 247 kilograms. Why am I doing these tests? The goal is to show a few things. First, after a repair with us,
Първото нещо е, че след ремонта при нас
the adaptive functions of the shock absorber remain absolutely operational.
абсолютно работещи, както при
Everything works just like with a brand new original shock absorber.
това нещо. Запазваме всички.
With this, we keep all the suspension functions of the car. Second, the graph is absolutely symmetrical, which shows the shock absorber was repaired to top quality.
Показва, че амортисьора ремонтирано.
There will be no more knocking in the car's suspension.
И няма да тропа на колата.
And third, all adaptive functions are preserved. Now we'll show how we change the resistance.
За да ви покажем сега какво съпротивление прави, веднага го
We reduce it slightly. Now we can very smoothly increase the resistance.
да усилим съпротивлението и да го намалим. Така че този
This shock absorber now has a long life ahead.
живот на Porsche Taycan на автомобила.
Finally, we'll show how the three-chamber air spring works on the Porsche Taycan. The principle is the same as on the Porsche Panamera 971. This is the lower part of the air spring.
Това е долната част на въздушната.
We disassembled it to make it clearer. Here is one chamber. Here is another chamber.
Една камера, тук още една камера.
You can clearly see inside the openings through which the air enters.
Ясно се виждат вътре отворите, през които...
This is the assembled air spring with the shock absorber.
Това е сглобената възглавница с...
And what do we see? Here is one chamber, a second chamber, a third chamber.
Една камера, втора
At the moment, the air spring is empty and there's no pressurized air in it.
камера с въздух и не е пълна. Тоест,
We'll inflate it to 5 atmospheres.
на 5 атмосфери. Да, е.
Okay, it reached 6 atmospheres. So right now, the air spring has 6 bar of air.
В момента във възглавницата има 6 бара въздух. Като
Only this chamber is filled. Only the rubber sleeve is full.
камера, само въздушната възглавница е пълна.
The lower 2 chambers are empty and have no pressurized air in them.
В тях няма въздух. Де факто в момента,
In such a state, the air spring is in sport mode.
защото обема на общата въздушна
Because the total air spring volume on which the car will rest is small.
обема на всяка една
The volume of each individual air spring is a major factor for the spring coefficient spring rate.
пружината, в спринг рейта.
We'll even show the full formula for determining the spring rate of an air spring.
Формула за определяне на спринг рейт на въздушна възглавница.
After we remove control from this solenoid valve, it will open this empty chamber,
Клапан, той ще отвори
and
тази
part of the
камера,
air will
която
fill
е
it.
празна, и част от въздуха тук ще премине в новата
And the
камера.
overall pressure in the two chambers will equalize and drop.
Колегата ще дръпне едното.
Now my colleague will pull one wire and we'll see the pressure drop.
Оп, почти
Up! Almost 2 atmospheres dropped from one to the other.
едната към другата. Сега ще махне другото.
Now we'll fill the third one too, and there, it already dropped.
То вече падна, да. Вече сме, значи от 6
From 6 atmospheres, the total pressure dropped to 3.5, which is a very big difference.
голяма разлика.
In this way, the car can change the spring rate of the air spring
Да променя спринг рейта на въздушната
and make the air spring softer or stiffer in combination with
в комбинация с
a softer or stiffer adaptive shock absorber.
амортисьор. Това е супер, а именно Porsche.
This is great. Porsche is always great. See you next time. Bye bye.